All right, this Blender tutorial is applicable for anyone who's learning Blender, but this is specifically for Eli and his project. I wanted to show you a few best practices that I think will help with what you're doing. So I've got a new scene here. I deleted everything. We're just starting from scratch. Okay, so the first thing to look at is on your chainsaw that you sent me. Some of the geometry had like a rough texture to it, which I think may work for 3D printing, but I think is going to end up being kind of a problem for you. So I wanted to illustrate what may end up happening if you kept that going on, right? So we had like some points that were kind of randomly kind of passed through each other. And this is particularly on like the chain part of the chainsaw. Something like this. And that kind of gave it this texture, but there's a problem with it. The problem is that the 3D software, particularly when you go from, say, one software to another, like from Blender to your slicer for your 3D printing, the 3D software doesn't necessarily know what's inside and what's outside when you have things that pass through each other like this. So there is a way to analyze this, and there's also a language for it. The term is called manifold or non-manifold geometry. So manifold means that there's a clear inside and outside of the mesh. Non-manifold means that it passes through itself, and so it is no longer clear what's inside and what's outside. And the software does its best to figure it out, but in many cases it's going to cause problems. All right, so how do we analyze that? So we go to our overlays over here. We're going to turn on face orientation. And you see how that one's red? That means it's inside of the mesh. Now, if we go inside of this cube, it's all red. Okay, oh boy. Now, why is that? Let's turn on another thing here. We're going to turn on normals. Now, when it says normals, that means which direction is this face facing? Okay, so when I turn on normals, it should have a line pointing to the average direction that that face is facing. So let's turn that on. Turn on normals. Here we go. There it is. That's the line that's saying that face right there is facing that way. That's the normals of the face. Now, it's a weird term to say normals, but that's what it's called. I was going to insert some silly joke about how it's kind of lame to take a normal term like normal and then use it in an abnormal way for something, but okay, there you go. Dad joke. So again, that's this overlays tab here. We want to turn on face orientation, and you may also want to turn on normals under this menu here, which is just editing mesh overlays. When we hit the tab to go out of edit mode, those normals will turn off. So it's only when we're in edit mode, not in object mode. But you'll see that red non-manifold section is lighting up. So that's one thing to pay attention to. You want a manifold mesh. That means the inside is inside and the outside is outside. So if we were just to take this, say, one vertex right here and move it, I think we could solve our non-manifold issue. Okay, so that's one thing. But I wanted to give you a better solution. So that's just one way to like analyze whether or not your mesh is healthy. But what are some better ways to go about constructing it? So delete this object. We're going to make a new object. So do add mesh. You can do a cube. Now with a cube, you can actually do a lot of things. We can turn this cube into a cylinder with little effort. And that may seem very strange, but let's go for it. So I'm going to go back into object mode. I'm going to go to modifiers. It's this little wrench right here. Click-a-roni, hit add modifier. You can do generate subdivision surface, or you can just type it in here in the search. You want subdivision. So what that's going to do is it's going to cut it into smaller pieces. Okay. So when we're in edit mode, this is what we actually are working with in terms of geometry. And then after the subdivision, that's what ends up happening to it. So what's going on? It's subdividing it, means it's cutting it in half, cutting every plane in half. And then it's averaging the location of those. Now, how do I modify this so that we create a cylinder out of it? We take these two edges, I'm taking these two faces, and I'm going to go back to edge mode. So it takes the edges around them. And I'm going to go to right click, edge crease. So what edge crease does is it says on these edges, I want you to maintain the geometry that I've got. I don't want you to round this part out. Okay, so if we go all the way to maximum edge crease, you can see it's not rounding this way because these are creased, but these faces right here, these edges are not creased, so it's rounding that way. And if we could increase the levels of cuts, that means how many times is it subdividing it? Bada bing, bada boom. See that? Now, this is not going to be perfect because it is starting from a cube, and then it's trying to round that out. And in order to get a more perfect subdivision, you actually kind of have to stack these. You could use creases, or you could use edge loops or bevels or things like that. So the more geometry you add to it, remember, it's cutting it, it's subdividing it. So if we add more geometry, like say we click here, then I do Command or Control Shift and click here, it's going to select all those around it. Actually, let's just go into ghost mode, and we're going to select those. Now, what if I just like bevel these edges, which is, I forgot the hotkey for that. The bevel edges, Control B. That's it. That shouldn't be a hard one. Okay, so if I bevel those, I'm adding more geometry. And so the number of cuts there increases. Or if I took all these edges, say we grab all these, and we add edge loops. So we could either use this tool to cut a loop, and you can click and actually you can do it this way, or if you do through the command option. So we got this tool here, and we do, I think it's Shift R. No, it's Command R. Hit Command R, and you can actually hit a number like 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you can hit backspace if you do too many. And that gives you the number of cuts you're going to put into it. Okay. So hopefully I am not completely confusing you, but you see we started with a cube and we ended up with a cylinder. And that's using this subdivision. Now if I turn this off, remember we grabbed those edges and we beveled them. And then we've got these cuts right here. Now if I take these, let me take these, and I'm going to reset the crease on those. And just as a quick thing, if you like select a face and then you go to edge mode, it's going to have the same selection. Okay, so you can go to edge mode there, get those two faces, grab all the edges. If we open up here, you can turn off this mean crease. You can turn it to 0, and that'll just reset it. And again, that's just this item menu that pops out here. And the other way to do that is Shift E. You go up and right to increase it, or down and left to decrease it. And I think there's also a way to reset. If you right click, there's a way to reset weights and creases. Okay, let's go back to turning on our subdivision. That's this little monitor thing. So this is like preview mode. This camera means when you render it, like when you save it out or render it, it will go to render, the render quality. So we want to go to this real time, so what we're seeing in the window. golly gee, look what happened. So we turned off those edge creases and it rounded it out, right? Because it's averaging. See, there's the corner. So it's averaging from here to here and it's rounding it out. So what we can do is we can grab these here. If I grab that one, I go to the other side and I Control Shift click, it's going to grab that whole edge loop. You can do the same thing here. Shift click on that and then Control Shift the opposite way. Get that edge loop. Now, watch this. We'll do scale. And of course, we don't want to scale every axis. We want to go on the X, which is this red one down here. So we just press the letter X. And so now we're just going on the X axis. You see, the closer we get these to that corner, the tighter that bevel is. Because again, it's averaging this out and it's going from all this empty space in here and then from here to there and down. Okay. And if we do the same thing, let's say we go to face mode, we go to the face here, and we do I for inset, and we bring this in. See, so we've added these edge loops around the corner, and that tightens the curvature when the subdivision modifier is in action. And we can increase the number of subdivisions. We can increase the number of times it cuts it until you get this really smooth surface here. And the nice thing about this is we're not dealing with this really dense geometry where you got to grab all these little points and stuff, because when we go tab into edit mode, that's what we're dealing with. We're just dealing with a few points. We grab this, I can move that up, we can warp it, right? Go back out to object mode. See, so it gives us a lot more control without making a real mess. And this is a modifier. That means it's not really baking in the result until we save the file off for printing. So we can make edits, make all these changes. So this is a really great way to work. All right, so I'm going to lower these subdivision levels here so that it's not like crazy. And let's make some geometry out of it. We're in tab into edit mode. So if you hit tab, it goes object to edit mode. So we're in edit mode. I'm going to hit the number 3 to go to face mode. I'm going to inset this some more. Okay. I'm going to inset just a little bit more. And then do scale. That's the S key. And then we press X to constrain it to the X. And you remember what we said about this subdivision here and creasing? Shift E, increase my crease. There. I'm going to inset again. And I'm going to inset again and scale. S to scale. I don't want everything. I just want the X. We're going to go back. I'm going to go out. Let's go out like that. Okay, there we go. And hit tab. There we go. We can increase our subdivision levels to see what it's going to look like. Okay. So what am I even making here? Well, this is going into the next part. You know, you had used that like rough texture type thing with the random kind of randomized noise for the chainsaw blade. We can actually do that in a really elegant way. All right, so we're in object mode. We're going to go add curve. So this is not actually a mesh. And we're going to add a path. There it is. It's going the wrong way. I want it to go the other way. So I'm going to do R 90 degrees, and I have to press Z to be on the Z axis. So it's rotating on the correct axis. Otherwise, if I did R for rotate, I'm just doing like this. And then it ends up picking whatever my screen space is, which is never true, you know, X, Y, or Z. So you have to constrain it to whichever axis you want to be rotating on. Okay. So now we've created a curve path. That's what we made. Or an object mode. Let's go to edit mode. There it is. I'm going to hit the end here. I'm going to hit E for extrude. And remember about constraints? Is if I just click that, it goes up. I want it to be on the Z axis. So we're going up, like so. And we're going to do E again. And this one I want to have on the Y axis. Okay. E again on the Y axis. And E again on the Y. And I want it right above this other one. Okay. So there is a way to get those lined up pretty easily. The first thing I'm going to do is select this and that, and I'm going to do segment, make a segment. So now those are connected. That didn't do what I wanted it to do. Why did it do that? Let's try this again. Control points, make segment. That is very strange. There's always some funny thing going on. I may as well delete that one if it's being so problematic. I'm going to do E, Z, go down here, and then let's see if we can connect those two. Now, that's not as smooth of a point as I want, right? Let's see, radius, no, weight. There we go. That didn't loop back around the way that I wanted. I don't like that. There's got to be a way to average out those curves. Well, this may not be the best way, but I'm going to select these 2 points, make sure this one's selected last so it's white. I'm going to right click, I'm going to do snap selection to active, because I was going to snap those two together. Now, that should do it. Now I'm going to take these 2 points, I'm going to do S for scale, Y, and 0, so they're on the same plane. Then I'll do S, Y, 0, same thing here. S for scale, Y for the Y-axis, 0 to get them on the exact same plane. These should be the same. We're going to do the same thing. Those are the same. And then, obviously, this one's a little bit higher here. And I actually, you might be able to just type in the number 0 for the Z height. Set it down to where it needs to go. Now, excuse me, these points we can move G, Y to move them out, to change that curvature, right? But this essentially is our, that's our chainsaw shape, right? So we want to take this whole thing, and we're going to scale it up. Like that. And we're going to take this, we'll do G, Y, move that out like that. And I think we can take this whole thing, probably just move it up, G, Z, move it up like that. Okay, so then we're aligned with this thing here. Now, the moment of truthiness. Let's see if this works. We're going to click on this thing. And we're going to go, we can actually collapse this. So it's still active, that subdivision. Again, we can hit this to view or hide it. And then let's add a new modifier. The new modifier we're going to add is array. Okay. Looks like it's going the wrong way, isn't it? So we're going to do curve. We're going to select the path that we made. Okay, now, let's see. Looks like we need to change some settings here. So if you go to distance, you can set the distance in between these. Okay, and now we're instancing these. Now we've only made one, but we've got a whole bunch of them. So align rotation, let's see, we can change that. So that continues to be in the alignment that that it was for, you know, that we built it in. And then the other method we could do is count. So you could say, I just want a certain number of these. Now, the problem with this is if we change, like if we get it just so, and then we go back to our NURBS path here and we grab these and we just like go up or whatever and we move it, it's going to maintain that count. So it's going to like stretch them out, right? Whereas the other method, undo that. That got to edit modifier cube. And actually, it's not a cube anymore, is it? We're going to call this our chain link. There we go. And this is our chain path. So keeping some nice clean collection there. So we go to our chain link. And if we set this to distance, and we do go back and do the same thing, we go back to our chain path and we hit tab and we start moving this around, it's just going to add more links rather than stretching them out, right? Now, the problem with that is it's going to give us a nice even distribution except for the origin point, which you can see is down there at the bottom left. See how it's got to make new ones and bring them out, and then as soon as it hits the threshold, it's going to pop out some more. Pop, boop, 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 boop. Right. So, fun. Let's go to our chain link. Let's hide this and hide that. So we go back to our normal little humble little fella here. And then let's go to hit tab and let's do add a cube. Okay, so we're gonna actually make like the cutting blade for this, right? And I'm gonna go GZ, move that down. We're gonna go S, X to make it thinner. Now, of course, the cutting blade on a chainsaw is offset, right? So we're gonna do G for move and X and move it off to the side like that. And then I'm gonna go hit 2 to go to edge mode. I'm gonna grab that, hit G for move and Y to move forward. Right, so we're giving it a little bit of a shape. Now you remember we had a modifier on this before, didn't we? We had a subdivision modifier. And what's going to happen to this? It's all going to get rounded out, right? So let's hit that, see what that looks like. That's what's going to happen to the shape. So if we want to sharpen all those edges out, we can select them. And actually, for the record here, so we'll go Command plus, select all that. We hit Shift E to crease these edges. We're going to amp up the crease a little bit, just so that it holds its form. And that's probably good for now. So I'm going to hit tab. We're going to go back to our array to turn that back on. And now we got our chainsaw, but it's not aligning correctly. Let's see if we can fix that. There we go. So we just had to change a few options here for what's up and forward. And then now we've got this instanced across the curve, that path that we made. Now remember, we can adjust this path if we want to. So we can hit tab and grab these points, hit G and Y, and I can move this, make the chainsaw longer, shorter. Okay. Now I would recommend you try to get it so that you don't have duplicate geometry. See that bottom left there where there's a duplicate and they're really close there? Now see how they're pushing into each other? We don't want that. So the pure way to get rid of that is to go to count and then just change the count every time you change the form. And it's going to evenly space those. Right? So that way you're never going to have that issue of them bumping into each other. All right, so that's great. Now we've changed that. And what's wonderful about this is like, okay, say you go to 3D print this and you find out that like, you know what, this little knobby thing here, it's just not strong enough. It breaks off. right? So instead of deleting all of these and starting over, we just instance it. So we only have one. So if we hide this, we go back to this one and we say, let's thicken this thing up. So we're going to grab that one face there. And I'm actually going to have to go into like ghost mode here so I can see it. That's this button up here. It says toggle X-ray. I call it ghost, but it's X-ray. And if you're in X-ray mode, you'll see the faces now have a little dot in the center. That's what you want to aim for. So I'm going to click that dot right there. Excellent. Now I'm going to do scale X. I'm going to make that wider. Now we're coming outside of the form here, so we kind of have to move the whole thing over. I'm going to do Control plus 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 plus. It's going to select everything that's connected to what I just had selected. And I'm going to do G for move, X, and I'm going to just scooch that over. Just like that. Hit Tab. Go out of X-ray mode, hit Tab. There it is. We've thickened that up a little bit. We're going to turn the array back on. Bada boom. All right, so if you need to make changes like that, and actually, let's say, okay, all these gaps in between these, obviously we're going to make the chain, guide inside here. But if we don't want these gaps, we're going to have to add something, right? So again, we're going to turn off the array, hit Tab, go in here. Let's do add a cube. We're going to scale this down. We'll scale X in, and we'll go G, Y, and we'll move that forward. And then, of course, we got to crease all these edges. That's Shift E, but remember, you can also right-click and go to, we got to be in edge mode. You got to right-click and go to crease, edge crease. And then you just push up to the top right till it's creased up. That's probably good. I'm actually going to leave it just a little bit because if we change the subdivision levels, it'll give it just a little bit of a rounded edge. And let's have a look at what that is like. Let's open up our subdivision tab again here. Again, this is under modifiers, subdivision. And let's increase our levels. Let's just go a few times. Let's go up to 4. Right, and then it just kind of rounds out those edges a little bit, which when you're 3D printing, that is nice so that you don't have really sharp edges or things that'll break easily. That rounding is helpful. Okay, so then we're going to go back to our array, turn that back on, and now we've got this linkage that holds them all together. Okay, now let's build the center part in here. That should be pretty straightforward. We're in object mode. We're going to do add, mesh. Now, we could do this 2 different ways. We could add a cube. Okay. And then we could move this whole thing up. G, Z, move it up. I'm going to go into edit mode, tab, S to scale it up till it touches those a little bit. And then G, Z, down a little bit there. S, scale it up. S, X to come in and make it thin. And then S, Y to make it longer. And then G to move, Y to move on the Y-axis. Like that. Bada bang. So then now we can just grab this end. I want to be in face mode. So I'll grab that end face. Hit E to extrude. Hit Y to constrain it to the Y-axis. And then I'm going to do S to scale and Z to constrain it to the Z-axis. And then I'll move it back in a little bit. G, Y, bring that back. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Boom. E to extrude. I'm going to lock that to the Y-axis. Okay. S and Z. Just scale that out there. Now, remember I said we could isolate things. So I've just clicked on that. I'm going to go /. Everything else is still here. It's all still visible on the layer stack. It's just I'm keying in on this one thing to look at, right? Now let's add a subdivision modifier to this so that we get the rounded edge. Okay. Subdivision. Okay. Oh boy, look at that. What do we got to do? We got to either add edge loops or add creases. Okay, so we go tab to edit mode. We need to go to the surface mode, hit these faces here. So the reason we're doing that is we're not selecting these edges on the inside because we don't want those to be creased because then it'll just be sharp. But if we crease these ones, Shift E, go up, top right. So now it's sharp on that edge, but not the other edges. But you see this? See, it's trying to blend from there to there. That's not good. So we got to add some edge loops. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to go into ghost mode so that I can see the whole thing like that. And I just want to grab these inside ones right here. Now, there's a couple ways we could do this. We could bevel this edge there, or we can just add edge loops, right? And you can do a loop cut tool that's right here, or you can just press Control R and mouse over it, click it, and then you slide it to where you want it. So we're going to slide that really close there. So that's going to, cut that. It's going to cut that a little more cleanly. We could actually do another one right in here. All right, so we got that, and we'll do one over here. Okay, so we'll do Command R. We just mouse over that line, click it, and then slide that one over. Okay. And we might actually do another, just a loop down the center. I think that might solve that problem. So you can click on one end here and go to the other end, hit Control Shift. Oops, I missed it. There we go. Control Shift, click. It'll select everything there. Unfortunately, it selected everything else. So maybe that's not the best way. Let's go straight up and down here in ghost mode. There we go. Selected all of these interfaces, and we can do Command R. You can actually hit a number like 2, click, click. There it is. Now that did not seem to solve our edge problem, but I bet if we get rid of this crease, but we just add edge loops, that's going to solve it. Let's see. So we made these edge loops. We're going to do scale, and we'll do X, and we're going to scale that till they're pretty close. And the other thing we might check, you remember we had a problem earlier with normals? Let's check that. Well, we got the face right here. Okay, so that's not a problem. It's not normals. Let's remove the edge crease on these. Click these guys. Gotta make sure we get them all. Of course, we could just press A. Let's select all. Hit that edge mode, and then go to the mean crease and just make that 0. So there we go. Those are all 0. Because we added the edge loop in there, it's holding that edge pretty well. But if we want to tighten that up even more, we can inset these faces. So an inset, just go select these, hold Shift, select those and those. An inset just puts a face inside like that. We'll just bring it close to the edge like that. There we go. Let's turn off ghost mode or X-ray mode. Looking pretty good. We can increase the subdivision levels so that it is smoother. Remember, we're in isolation mode, so we got to hit the / to get out of isolation mode. And we could make a few adjustments just to clean up those gaps in there and stuff. Now, here's a kind of neat thing. We've got our chain path. We could actually add a little slack on the chain, right? So if we just grab this one and do GZ, drop that down, if you wanted that. Now, of course, you're going to 3D print this, I think. So you want to be careful that you maintain a form that can be that's rigid enough. But if you wanted to add a little bit of irregularity, you have that opportunity to do so. In fact, you could like take these two edges, and I think you can do subdivide here. So you could like put another control point in here and move that around as well. All right. So we could give it a little character. So it's not perfect. It's got a little bow to it, right? And again, so we're going to fix this. So let's do that. I think we would solve it actually, honestly, just by moving the whole object down a little bit. Right about there. Okay. All right, there was one more thing I wanted to show you, and that was the handlebar. Now, we made that curve here. We can do the same thing with the handlebar. Let's do add curve, and we just do a path. Okay, so where's our path? Do G to move, Z to move it up, S to scale it up, hit tab to have a look at it. Okay, let's do E, Z to keep that up and down. That's probably good enough for now. Okay, so we get this curve. What we can do over here, we go to data, click geometry, and then let's add some depth to this. So you can like make pipes and stuff and move them around. So for that kind of form, this is a great way to work, because one thing that's great about this is we can change it later. All right, so I'm going to hit tab, I'm going to hit E, Z, I'm going to go down, I'm going to hit G, Y, move it back. See what I'm saying here? G, X, bring it in a little bit, maybe E, X, bring that one in. Okay, grab this one, E for extrude, Z for up and down, and then let's do E again, or do Z to down, and then how about E load down? No, let's go X and go in like that, right? So then when we put our form here, we've got this kind of more organic shape, and we can move all this stuff around. G for move, and you can move these freeform. Here. See, let's grab these two, and we'll go G, Y to move those forward a little bit. We do S, SX to move them out and kind of tighten that bend around this curve here. Because the closer those control points are to each other, the more control they have over each other. So G and Z to go up, like that. See, so this actually is a pretty powerful way to work. In fact, what's really nice about this, let's tighten up this corner here. So we'll grab these two, we'll do segment subdivide. So now we got another point here, but we'll just do G and we'll slide it up there just to like tighten that bend out. Tighten up that corner. Okay, now there's a couple things we can do here. We've got this, we hit tab, and that's going to bring us out of edit mode, and we're now into object mode. Remember, we go to this data, object data properties, and we're on geometry. You can change this a little bit. You can do an offset, so you can like push it off the line. If you just want to make a few little changes, you can change the contour of it so that it's not so perfectly round. We can change the resolution just like our subdivision levels, right? So now it's actually like a square, and we can increase those levels. We could fill the caps off the end so that they're not open. And you can actually do a profile or an object. We're not going to do object because it gets a little crazy, but we're going to do profile, and we can actually change the shape of this of this edge here, just with this. See, so what this profile is doing, if you look at the end, it's using this shape that we're making here. Okay. So you can get harder edges with that. I'm just going to set it to round. That's fine. Okay, there's another way you can do this, and I'll just show it to you. I think this is a much stronger way because we can edit it later. But if you were working just with polygon modeling, you could do it with a cylinder. So we're going to do add, mesh, cylinder. When you create a cylinder, you go into isolation mode. Excuse me. You can set the number of edges that it has, but it's on create when you create it. So when you go add, mesh, cylinder, it's down here. It might be condensed like this, and you'll have to open it up, that panel. But you see this here, it says vertices. You could change that. So we could change this to like 8. So it's an octagon. And I guess that's fine. There we go. So we got our object here. So we're going to move this over here. G, X, G, Z. All right, so we're kind of in the same area here. What I'm going to do with this, I'm going to go into edit mode, and you grab the end and move that up. And instead of trying to extrude this, you know, if I try to extrude it, go up, and then maybe like rotate it on the y-axis. See what happens is it starts to lose its form as it creases around that corner. Right? That's because we're using the same geometry. We actually need to kind of extend that curve. All right, so how do you do that? Fortunately, there's an easy way. We just take this whole thing with the command or control plus, grab that whole thing. Shift D will duplicate anything. Okay, so now we've got 2 objects like that. And we're going to rotate this one 90 degrees on the y-axis. So I'm going to hit Y, I'm going to type in 90. G, X to slide it over. Okay. I'm going to grab this end and that end. Go into vertex mode. And then we're going to do, delete face. Okay. We didn't actually have to be in vertex mode for that. You could do it from face mode, but I was hoping that I could have these faces still selected. All right, but I've got these 2 faces, and I'm going to go to, oh, what's it called? I thought it was called bridge, but I don't see it in here. Oh, that's right. I need to be in edge mode. I'm going to go to edge mode. Right click, bridge. There we go. And again, we can open up this little tab here, and we can add the number of cuts that we get. Okay. And we can kind of smooth it out. Relax it. Okay. So if you wanted to work with traditional polygon building instead of using these curves like that, you can do it. It just takes a little bit more setup and a little more thinking ahead, because you'd have to kind of lay out your linear portions and then delete the ends and try to figure out where you want to connect them together. Now, there actually would be a good reason for doing that. And that good reason is that for video games, the kind of modeling that you do is going to be quad modeling like this, where everything's going to be made out of quads, these squares. And in order to go from the method that we did here with subdivision, I mean, you can do subdivision with quads. You have to be a little disciplined about it. But it is especially to go from like these curves where it's kind of making geometry that we can edit with the modifiers. When you go to export that, it doesn't always give you clean quads that are good for games. And the reason that it's different for games primarily is lighting, because it lights from like corner to corner, and texturing, because you have to apply a texture to all these, and they have to be unwrapped, so you kind of cut a seam and everything gets unwrapped. But that's just for games. If you're going to 3D print this, I would use these other methods because they're much more friendly towards editing, making kind of big sweeping changes. Whereas this here, you know, you're going to give yourself, it was just going to take a lot more time to, you know, kind of get this bend and get it to work. Not a ton of time. It's not terrible, but it takes more planning. Okay, so that's just a different method. All right, I hope that helps. And, you know, we could build out the rest of the body. I'm not going to do that. I think if you use these methods, you know, where you say create a mesh, bring in a cube, then we just bring this over here and we scale it up, and let's see, bring that into here, and we go into edit mode, and maybe we want to subdivide this. Okay, so we cut it into smaller pieces. Maybe we want to subdivide it one more time. And then you can start grabbing some of these faces. And let's see, faces, not edges. And, you know, adjusting the form. And just like we did earlier, you could use the subdivision modifier and get some pretty nice, pretty nice effects on that. Okay, effect, let's see. All right, well, that's probably enough for today. Again, edge creases, subdivision modifier. Now, the only other thing I think we really need to think about is when you go to export this, all of this information should come through, but if it doesn't, here's what you need to do. You got to go to object mode. I would save your file first. But if you go to something like this that has this big array, you go back to your modifiers, you can click here and do apply. And this will bake the effect into the object. So if we do apply and apply, now we no longer have the connection between the chain and the array. Okay, we broke that. This is now just a static mesh. So if I click on this thing, I go into edit mode. That's what we got. We got all this geometry to deal with. And this is why I was telling you earlier that there are other ways to work that will make your life a lot easier. Because now if we want to make edits to this, you know, we're moving these around like by vertices. And there are ways to work with this. If you build a clean model, then you can work with edge loops, you know, but my goodness, you don't want to. It's so much better to do it the other way, right? So we're just going to go back. Let's see, edit, better history. Where are we? I'm going to turn off those apply modifiers, right? See how much faster that's going? Because we're instancing geometry. So like the computer only really thinks about the geometry once and then just duplicates that rather than calculating them all as separate pieces. Again, we can modify these, hit tab, and we can go in, isolate that one. I mean, if we change this wildly, right? Like we could take this section right here and we could extrude that. take this and extrude that, and give a, you know, that little tooth thing on the chain, right? Shift E, I'm going to crease that edge, right? So there's so much opportunity here to continue editing. Okay, and I'm going to hit tab, come back out of this, turn off ghost mode. Look, we just made that change to this whole thing, and it was just like less than a minute, right? Okay. If you have any questions, you know, I'm around, we can talk. But hopefully these methods were helpful for you. I suspect that these are new concepts. The modifiers, you know, adding the thickness, the geometry data to the curves, even using curves instead of just meshes, right? It's a different way of working. And all this information is out there on the World Wide Web. It's just hard to find if you don't know what it's called, right? And so now that you've got some terminology and a couple methods, you can start working from that. You'll see a lot of people end up using geometry nodes, but we are not going to get into that because that just gets into, it's almost like coding your shapes into existence. So we're not really going to do that. I think that this should be helpful. If you have any questions, I'm around. Good luck on your project. And I should have made an outro. We're done. See ya.